Hi everyone, and welcome to what I hope will be a weekly or bi-weekly edition of our webinar. The basic idea here is to give you direct access to the development team, give us a way to show what we are currently working on, and basically and hopefully have a lot of fun with seeing what's going on. So probably the nicest thing that I can say right now is that you see the big red and black logo that we have here, and this is going to be on our new t-shirts, and they're coming soon. So the way that it works, we're basically going to talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. Feel free to ask questions. You can ask questions by raising a hand. And before we go that, there is just a bit of agenda that I want to go through, and probably the funniest thing is this one. So we got a tremendous amount of questions about this feature, and this is basically RavenDB making a SQL Server its end target. So before we move into anything else, we have an awesome new feature that that doesn't demo very well. I will probably do a rerun of this with after I beat the code to submission. So apologies again, and let's move to the next feature. Hopefully this one will work. I see that we have some questions. Let's see where we are. Yeah. So okay. Okay. So some of the guys had some issue. By the way, you might have heard some barking in the background. This is my dog getting very upset that the demo doesn't work well. So let's see. So let's go to the original something. I was so worried about the backup, the periodic backup not replicating, that I didn't consider that the SQL replication won't work. So this is how it works. We have the notion of periodic backups, and as you can see, we specify that this should go to a specific S3 bucket. There is the AWS credentials, and this is on US East 1. And here is what happens. You can see here that we have this bucket, not one bucket. You can see here that we have all of those guys, and those things happen whenever we have a change to the database. And now I'm going to go ahead and create another one. And in a few minutes, and actually I set it up so it will happen every minute, so we'll see that we have a new one in here, and that new one, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do it like this. Restore. And now we're basically going to copy all of those here, and then we can issue the Raven Smuggler on this directory, and it will restore everything properly. We do this by tracking. Let me show you how we do this. We do this by tracking in here what is the last document and index e-tag that we replicated, and using that we're able to avoid so that the last thing that we exported. So we are only exporting new things or change things. This allows us to this allows us to very easily just set up the configuration and pretty much forget about backups in general, because RavenDB will handle that. If there are errors, you can see that we had some errors previously, but I don't want to generate errors right now because I messed up enough demos. Okay, so those were the two things that I wanted to show you, the periodic backups and the SQL non-replication. Let's see, we have some more guys, some more questions. Okay, so seeing the dog name is Arava, and she's a German Shepherd. Matt, yes, there are plans to support Azure Storage Blob, simple file storage, and those sort of things. Vlad asked about periodic backups in replication scenarios. How should we set it up? And the answer is that there is nothing to set up. Periodic backups and replication are two orthogonal things. You can do one of them, both of them, or any way that you want to do it. It doesn't actually matter. They don't have any interaction between one another. Khalid asked, any way to manage SQL replication and other plugins from code, like the index creation task? And the answer is that anything that you see here, there is absolutely no magic. So let's look at that. This is, for example, the periodic backup. And this is just a document with a well-known name. The only thing that the studio does is, and this is another bug that we need to solve, we need to select the appropriate one. So the only thing that the studio does is just give you the UI on top of that. That's all. Admittedly, if we go here to this guy, we're able to see that we give you nicer UI. In this case, we have IntelliSense, we have comments, those sort of things. But this is still just UI. If we go here to the documents, you will be able to see that this is all the data that you have is in here. And there is nothing special about it. This is just a document with a provided prefix. Now we have a more interesting question from Daniel. He asked, why isn't it possible to add bundles to a database after it was created? And the answer for that is that some bundles you would be able to add, but some bundles you would not be. For example, things like versioning or replication are. So let me show you what happens when we add replication. So we added this, and now we start writing. So now we have this user. Note that those things are added by the replication bundle. So, and also very, very important for us to actually be able to handle replication properly, to avoid having unnecessary conflicts and all of those sort of things. A versioning bundle, most of the bundles that we have actually do require us to have some sort of metadata. Compression encryption are probably obvious. Expiration as well, because it needs to do a lot of setup up front, quotas, and so on. So the basic idea is that we say that adding a bundle to a database after it was created is not supported. That said, I'm going to show you how to do it anyway, just in case you need to. And you can go to the database settings and click edit. Again, this is an unsupported configuration, and I need to change. So here are a few things that you need to see. First thing that you need to see is this. So you can see here two types of data. One data is in the settings, and if you look at the settings, this is just standard data that no one cares about. Then you have the secure settings. Secure settings, so By the way, all of this is stored in here, in the system database. And again, there is no magic. Here is this guy. But now you can see something very interesting in that the secure settings aren't actually stored as valid values. They're stored in some strange format that I don't understand. Let me show you what happened in here. And the basic idea is that we can go here, and here is my secret setting. Secure settings are actually encrypted using DPAPI, the Data Protection API, and that means that they are protected at the operating system level. Only administrators can decrypt that information. This is what we are doing behind the scene when you see it in here. And so now you can actually see what's been going on, basically. Let's see, we have a question from Vlad. In a master scenario, would you recommend to set up periodic backup on both servers and do 2 backups in case of one of the servers is down for whatever reason? I'm not really sure. In a master scenario, presumably, one of the data in both of them is actually the same. And the periodic backup usually back up into the cloud anyway. So I don't think that you need to back it twice. What's the point? So I would say that you want to have just one of those as backup. Matt Johnson asked, let's bundle write modules for the Studio UI for their own config docs. In the original version of the Studio that we had in Silverlight, we actually had that. The problem was that it was somewhat complicated, and up until recently we didn't have any additional bundles from third parties. So the answer for that is that I would love to have a pull request that would make this happen. And that is enough for the questions from the audience right now, unless you have more. What I want to do now, I want to move on to some questions that were asked ahead of time. So let's talk a bit about replication and sharding. What factor affect whatever you should think about replication? And the basic idea with replication is that it serves 2 dual purposes. Probably the most obvious example is that we want to have replication for high availability, for disaster recovery. Most of our clients set up replication in either 2 or 3 node clusters. And the basic idea is that there is no single point of failure, and because of the way that RavenDB works, they also get automatic failover and recovery and all of that. Between 1.0 and 2.0, there have been tremendous amount of work that we did to make sure that we are as robust as possible. I would like to explicitly thank the team from MSNBC. I think they are one of the guys that are using RavenDB in the most interesting production environment. They have multi-master, multi-node, multi-database setup, and they had a lot of suggestions and improvement about how to make this as robust and as valuable as it possibly could, to the point where now we have things like node goes down, node goes up, it broadcasts a suggestion to all of its siblings. Those suggestions get broadcast to the client, so we have really low recovery time for all databases. So as I said, one factor is the idea that we want high availability in disaster recovery. By the way, I apologize again for the dog. She's really interested in what I'm saying and what she's actually saying right now. Why don't you come and play with me? And So high availability in disaster recovery, we talked about that. Another point that you may want to use replication for is if you want to actually reduce the load on your data. Let's say that you have a common set of data that is frequently queried, accessed, and modified. At that point, you might want to say, okay, I'm going to have multiple, basically I'm going to load balance the data. This is usually useful if you have a relatively small amount of information in the hundreds of thousands, few millions of items, and you want to make sure that there isn't a single bottleneck in the environment. This usually means that most of your queries are going to be distributed among the member of the clusters, but writes are usually always go to a single master, and that's to avoid the potential for conflicts when you have two threads trying to modify the same object and they both go to different servers. So we talked about high availability, disaster recovery, and load balancing. Another thing that is quite common for customers to do is to use RavenDB for geo-distribution. So think about the scenario where we have a relatively fixed amount of data that we want to use in, let's say, Shanghai and Chicago. And in that case, the problem is that we don't want to go basically across the entire globe just to get that information. Let's say that we want to store the list of users. This is a relatively static information, and we can actually have RavenDB select the appropriate node to query for. This is something that you can extend and tell RavenDB when we are querying from this endpoint, we want to prefer this node. When we query from this database, from this data center, we want to use this endpoint, and so on. But the basic idea is that now we are doing geo distribution just to have the data closer to us. I'm going to, so I hope that everyone follows that. The next question, how does master-slave work in RavenDB? All replication in RavenDB is actually unidirectional. What do I mean by unidirectional? It means that it works from one server to the other server, and that's it. The key point here is that you can have two unidirectional associations. Let's see how it works. So what we have here is REPL 1, REPL 2. So, no, I actually need to create the REPL 2, and we set the replication, and everyone is happy. So now we have, and let's go here and create another Okay, so now we have two databases with one document in each of those. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to go into the REPL database, and I'm going to set up replication to localhost 8080. Database is REPL 2, and that's pretty much all I need to do. And let's see, in this database, you can see that I have user/Daniel, and now you can see that I have user/Daniel on this database as well. But notice that the fact that I said that we're going to go, from REPL to REPL 2 is a unidirectional association. So now REPL is the master and REPL 2 is the slave. I can change that to a master-master relationship by doing it the other way around, like this. Now I can go here and I can see that now we have it both ways. So I hope that made sense, and if you have questions about that, please use the question system to ask that. When should you start thinking about sharding with RavenDB? Basically, so with RavenDB we usually have the two scaling strategies. We have the replication option, we have the sharding option. They are orthogonal, so you actually may use both replication and sharding at the same time, sometimes even on the same database. The way that we usually look at that, sharding on a single database makes sense when the amount of information that you have is very large. We're talking about tens, hundreds, and millions of, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of documents that are relatively independent from one another. Now, here is a key point that we have to understand. We don't usually shard per collection. If you work with something like Mongo or ReactiveDB, I think was another one, they shard by collections. And that's really nice, but we consider that to be a really stupid thing to do, mostly because you ignore the association between the data. So here is how it works. Let's talk about something trivial like an accounting system, because that is obviously a very trivial system. Everyone can do that in a industry. And in accounting system, what is the root aggregate? The usual root aggregate is the notion of collection of accounts, and then we have invoices, account receivable, account. The other way, I don't know accounting terms in English. I barely know them in Hebrew. That's only as a self-defense against the IRS. So let's talk for a second about the notion of account and of accounts and invoices. In our system, we may have thousands of accounts, but we are likely to have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of invoices. And usually when you start talking about that, you say, okay, I'm going to shard the invoice collection. But that really makes very little sense, because invoices are not standalone. Invoices are associated with the account that generates them. And when you start having just blind sharding, or let's just shard by a single collection, you're ignoring locality. And locality is something that we're really careful. So with RavenDB, we shard on the account and shard all of the invoices based on the account. So all of the invoices for a specific account are going to sit on the same node as that account. As I said, this usually makes sense if you actually have a data set that can be broken down in this manner. Most data sets can. Think about something like a blog post. This is a really good example, because you can put all of the posts for a specific blog. I'm talking about a multi-blogger system, obviously. All of the posts for a single blog in the same place. That gives you a great locality that simplifies things greatly. Another thing that is very common is when you actually have geo-distribution. When you have different applications and you want to put related data nearby. This is, so we have a client that is, let's see what I can say about it. They're managing cars, for example. That would be a good example. And they have a facility in Shanghai, they have a facility in Chicago. And the users data that they have is shared. So all of the users are shared, and for that they have a database that is replicated between the two. And whenever someone from Chicago accesses the data, the validation checks are handled on the Chicago node. Whenever someone from Shanghai, the validation check is handled on the Shanghai node. And the user data is in a replicated database. And then you have things about the car. So you have the notion of a team, and team is in either location, and you have all of the work done per car, per team. That may be a lot of documents, and those things are actually handled on a per shard basis. So you have the Shanghai shard and you have the Chicago shard, and based on which team you are, we allocate you there. The data about the shards, the data in the shards is not shared among all the nodes. So this is a shard environment, and some of the node is in Shanghai, some of the node is in Chicago, and that's basically what I have to say about that. What factor affects whatever you should be thinking about replication? Do you care about the data? Do you care about high availability of the data? What happens if a node goes down? Those are the common reasons why people go into a replication. Most people avoid replication because they have bad experience doing replication with relational databases. With RavenDB, as you have seen, setting up replication is as easy as breathing. We just added a couple of text boxes. We checked a couple of checkboxes and set up the routing. It's really easy, and there is very low pain threshold for doing that. And as I said, everything else that follows from replication is already there for you. For example, failover, for example, recovery, those sort of things. Okay, we have a question from Sin Fieldman. Document versioning. Could we look into that? Especially how versions are treated or not by indexing. Okay, so let's do a sample of versioning. Where is my mouse? Here is my mouse. Okay. Okay, so now we need so this is the configuration for versioning. By default, I'm going to say that I'm going to version everything, and I want to keep 5 versions back. So let's see how this works now. I'm going to create a user /sim, and I intentionally had a typo in here. Now I'm going to go here and make a query on name field. As you can see, we have a result. That's good. And now I'm going to change that and say that now we're going to fix the typo. If we go here, you can see that we actually have 3 different versions. We have the initial revision, revision/1, which has field ma. We have the current revision, which is revision to field man, and we have the current instance. If we go to indexes and we query for field ma, it's not there. Versioned instances are not tracked by the indexing. We have some more questions. One from Khalid. Should you just enable replication by default even if you have only one node right now? Probably the answer is yes. There is no real cost for having replication on by default. You get some additional metadata, but that's really that. And Sean, I'm very sorry about mispronouncing your name. I get a special dispensation because I'm not actually speaking English. Also, I don't get names that aren't spelled properly. Okay. We have a question from Dan. Are you planning to blog about the replication ops story for RavenDB? Well, I think I actually done so quite a lot. We also have plans to offer a cluster manager that actually show you all of the replication scenario as they're happening. One thing that I want to show you that is really cool is that RavenDB is not a black box. So databases -REPL. So you can query the replication info endpoint, and this will give you a lot of information about what's going on. So in this case, you can see that, let's see, we are replicating to this value, and you can see that this is the last tag that we replicate to that guy, and here we're replicating from this guy, and the last time that we got a replication from it was at this point. So this is really allowing you as an administrator to have deeper insight into what's actually going on in the system. Okay, we have a question from Daniel, and Daniel asked, could you show the patching API with eval and/or how to migrate documents? Well, I'm going to do better than show you that. I'm going to show you that in the context of, here we have. So we have this name, and what we want to do now, I want to actually be able to change that into first name and last name. So I'm going to go here and this dot name. Yeah, it helps if you actually type the correct code. Now you can see that this is how it works. We can even do this. Now, here is a key point. So this is how you do patching. We can do that over the entire collection quite easily, etc. You can also do this through the API, and through the API, it would look something like this. You can see that this is the sample script that we do, and I just want to show this. Where am I showing that? Let's see. Not good. Hell, I will just show you that in a demo. I don't want to find the appropriate test right now. So here we go. Update by index. Raven/documents by entity name. This basically say, let's change all of the users. Let's change all of the users, and this is the script that we can provide. And I can just throw this in, and this will go ahead and do that. And this will run this code over all of the users. This is effectively what's happening behind the scene in here. Remember, the studio cannot cheat. Anything that the studio can do is exposed by the API. And Sean, yes, you can absolutely control how many versions are created through the how many revisions are created, and you do that by creating a document like this. And we go here, versioning. I want to do it for users. And this just gets translated into this document. And this is a standard document. It doesn't require you to do anything else. Glenn, can you shard at the database level? You have a lot of databases and you only want some databases on specific node, mainly due to geolocation. And the answer is that absolutely yes. Sharding and replication are per database only. So you can have one database that is replicated, one database that is sharded, one database that is both, one database that is neither. Also note that there doesn't have to be a match between the different databases. You don't have to have database full on one server and replicated database full on another server. You can have from full database on one server to bar database on another server, or even to the same database on the same server. This is usually only relevant when you're doing testing, but it's an option. Nick Blair is asking, can the versioning bundle be used as an alternative to the event sourcing pattern? Not quite, for different reasons. You can absolutely use versioning bundle as a way to keep historical record of all of your changes. Event sourcing go the other way around. Instead of keeping the historical record of all of your changes, what they want to do is to keep record for why you made those changes. The event is the reason and the change is the output. They want you to keep track of the reasons and not for the output. So you can get a lot of the same things done using versioning, but the purpose is quite different. And John Nelson is asking, is versioning compatible with replication? And the answer is yes. Daniel is asking, when do you plan to support the blob storage in the Studio UI? I assume that you're talking about blob storage for the periodic backup, and the answer is probably a few days after we actually support Azure blob storage in the periodic backup in the actual bundle. And we have Thomas to just say hi, so hi. Daniel, what kind of performance can we expect from the patching API? And so that's complex for a lot of reasons. Typically, the cost for the patching API is loading the document, modifying them, and storing them. Most of the cost goes to the loading and storing part. That depends on the size of your database, that depends on your disk and those sort of things. Something that you have to be aware of is that there is a limit to how much we will let you patch. So let's say that here is a good way to kill a database. Now, if you try to do this, you'll get an error, and the error is that there are too many steps in the script. We limit you to, by default, about 10,000 steps that you can do before we cut you off. So patching a document is usually a matter of a few milliseconds, 10 to 20. It could go to 50 depending on how complex the script, how big is the document, and so on. But it's pretty efficient. So we have a question from Khalid. Is the patch a custom DSL? And the answer is no, the patch is just JavaScript. You can do anything that you can do in standard JavaScript in there. Sergey Almazov asks, is a high availability in a high availability environment, how do you manage server maintenance, restart system updates that are running RavenDB? And the answer is that in a high availability environment, what I do is very simple. I just set up replication between two servers and forget about it. Mostly because RavenDB will handle fail over for you automatically. It's baked into all of the clients. You don't have to worry about it. You shut down the client, you shut down the server, the client automatically fail over to the secondary server. You will see some higher latency while the system adjusts, because most network issues are actually transient. We are actually going to spend a while still trying to ping the old server and failing, and only then failing to the secondary server. But that's about it, and it's highly efficient back-off strategy, and it's really good at what it's doing. Let's see. So Sean is asking, can you decide in my code whatever a specific document update will generate a new revision? No, you cannot. We always create new revisions. It should be relatively easy to allow you to do this, but you have to understand that this breaks a major guarantee that you have with versioning, that every change generates a new version. Now, there is the notion of a minor edit, but version is actually intended for scenarios where you can never delete and you can never modify old values. So the basic idea is that we want to have an accurate, auditable log of what happened, and allowing you to make changes without modification break that promise. Now we have another question from Thomas. In order to improve our unit tests, is it possible to disable indexing without using the HTTP API? And the answer is that this is absolutely possible. I don't know why you want to disable indexing in your tests, but this is what you do. Like this. When you want to resume them, stop indexing workers. Yes, and spinning. So this is to stop. This is to start indexing directly through the API that we provide. Okay, so the question here, when are we going to support attachments in the studio? And the answer here is that this is a low priority feature for us. I would love to get it as a pull request for someone, but for the most part, we're dealing directly with documents, and that's it. So the basic answer is that attachments are waiting for a pull request. Dan is asking, is a supported way to add a bundle to an existing database to create a new database and migrate all the data? Yes, that's the supported way of doing that. Matthew is saying that the RavenDB profiler on iendo.com is showing the wrong data. That's not supposed to happen. Let's see. And I assume that you're talking about this. I don't see an error in here. It looks like it's a valid output. Matthew, it's maybe that what you got is a refresh issue or something like that. Probably caching issue. Maybe you didn't have the JTemplate.js script loaded or something like that. At any rate, Matt is asking about query result snapshotting, which reminds me that we don't have whatever, yeah. No, that's not. This is our doc. Allow the snapshot. Yeah, so this reminds me that we don't actually have a feature for that, but the basic idea with query snapshotting is that you can freeze an index at a given point of time, and this gives you the ability to do things like stable paging and those sort of things. There is also another aspect of that, which will be coming with the transform result transformation, which will be much more powerful. We hope to be able to do that by mid-February. The index document bundle is so here is the idea of the index document bundle. Assume that you had the ability to do something like, okay, we have, let's say that this is an index. So now we're working on that, and put document and so the basic idea is that you have something like that you have the ability to provide a custom scripts that will operate on the result of the index. The basic idea is that we want to do that on the result of MapReduce indexes. So doing that, you can do things like keep running balances, keep track of when things have changed, and those sort of things. Let's see. Mehmet Kut, I hope I didn't just murder your name. Could we store older versions on another machine automatically? I only want to store current version on the live database. What you could do in order to do that is to have a replicated database. So let me show you how we can do that. This requires you to have two databases, DB1, which has replication, and then we have DB2, which has replication and versioning. On DB1, we're going to set up replication to DB2. And now we're going to say this, user/1, A, B, and C. So as you can see, we have only this value in here. If we go to DB2, we don't have this value in here. Oh yeah, of course, yeah. The reason for that is that replication doesn't let other bundles to interfere with its work. It's lower level than most other bundles. So the answer to that is that not easily you cannot. I thought that they would play together. They do not. Actually, they play together very well. They just don't do what I expect them to do in this scenario. What you could be doing is to modify the versioning bundle to make the revision goes to another database. And Daniel asking, when do you plan to support attachment in the Studio UI? When I have a pull request for that. Sean, minor edit is related to versioning. So, for example, changing a typo in the name of someone is a minor edit. It shouldn't trigger a full audit cycle. But I'm trying to think about, but changing. So here is a good example. Let's say that you're versioning contracts, and you have the contract terms and everything, and everyone is happy about that. But then you realize that when you typed your name into the contract, you had an extra space or something like that, and you want to fix that. Fixing the something minor in the name field is a minor edit. It doesn't impact the contract. So logically speaking, you can say, okay, I don't want to have a version because of that. Most of the time what you do, most of the time you don't want to actually go ahead and do that, because what happens if you change the name on the contract? That is no longer a minor edit. That is a very substantial edit and should be tracked. So the basic idea is that the versioning bundle doesn't support the notion of minor edits. You could add that if you wanted, but that changes the semantics of how you're working with the versioning bundle. It's really depends whatever you have any regulatory concerns with regards to versioning and audit tracking. Let's see. So Khalid wants to see an example of running a master, if I remember. Yes, master. So I think I can give you that example. Let's see if I actually can do it. So we have visual host, and this is usually the really easy way of actually working with testing out multiple RavenDB servers. So right now you can see that I have set up 3 RavenDB servers. I'm going to set up master replication between all of them. Now let's see how they look like. 79/docs, 78. And 77/docs. Now I'm going to go in here, and just for now I'm going to cheat and just use the default database, user/Sean. Whatever. So now we can see that this got replicated to all 3 of them. Now let's see what happens when we want to actually use that. Store open session. Okay, let's try it like this. So now, as you can see, I have 0 special configuration in here. I don't have to do anything about that. And you can see that it printed up the appropriate value. Now I'm going to go here and I'm going to kill this server. When I'm going to kill this server, you can see that obviously this is no longer responding. I'm going to go here, and RavenDB is now trying to access this server. As you can see, it can't find it. It was still able to give me the results. How was it able to give me the results? You can see it in here. Let's clear things. You see that, again, we try to access that, but now we get the reply from here, from the secondary server. We try again, and you see that after a few times, we notice that this is taking too long and we start failing over. I'm going to hit enter now. It's going to show up immediately. That's the idea. So this is basically the demo of failover using master-master. By the way, this would also work with master-slave. And Khalid is saying, that's awesome, not a question, a fact. I agree. Let's see. Goodbye, Sergeant. Troy is asking, could it be possible to have a corruption within ECENT that would require restore from backups? If you use RAID, would that be as effective as replication for data backup and uptime? The one case where we saw actual physical corruption was when the database had bad sectors, and another case where this was a really cheap database. This was a really cheap hard disk, and it lied to us about fsync. So it said, "Oh yeah, I flashed the data to disk," and it didn't actually do that. And then computer crashed at that particular moment, and then we had a problem because guarantees that we thought were maintained were not. That said, it is possible, obviously, to have the hard disk decide to lie to you. Another cause for corruption might be if you're trying to run RavenDB on a network share over the network, and that is not supported. So those are the only things basically that I can think of that could cause you to have actual physical corruption of the files. In general, regardless of how safe you think that is, I would strongly recommend you to have a backup anyway. With regard to the second question about if you use RAID, would that be effective as replication for data backup and uptime? No. RAID is for a set of disks, basically. It's not for anything beyond that. And if the machine is down, you cannot access the disk, and it does nothing for your uptime. RAID is really good if you have a failing disk, and depending on which RAID configuration you choose, then you can switch out the failing disk and restore that. But that's about it. Let's see. We have a question from Judah. Hi, Andy. I got a database hosted in Azure. If I create a database by saving a document with a well-known name, the database is created. But if I create a database through the Studio UI, I get a 403 error, which is forbidden. And the reason for that is that in 2.0, we have tightened the security around the system. So in order to create databases, you have to be an administrator. What you're doing, you're directly creating the document in the system database. The assumption here is that if you have access to the system database, you're already admin. So we don't protect you from that. We might need to check why you cannot authenticate as admin, but that's another issue. Now we have a question from Matthew Boning. I'm trying to replace a SQL-based DAL with Raven, but the current DAL does a lot of work to ensure security is applied. The authorization bundle seems perfect, but I'm having a hard time finding a good example of things like horizontal security, read-write, and more real-world examples. I think that the best place to ask for that is in the mailing list, mostly because we're already running overtime, and I think that just answering that would be a webinar all of its own. So, Matthew, please ask in the mailing list. I promise to give you a detailed reply there. Daniel is asking, what happened when you patch an index which is declared previously in code? I don't understand what you mean patch an index. You cannot patch an index. You can patch using an index, and from that perspective, there is nothing that matters to us how you created the index. Sergey is asking, is there a way to verify RavenDB database integrity? And sort of. We don't really need that for the most part, but let's see if I remember how to do that. Okay, so you can do the following. Compact. So you have this option. Yeah, sorry. You have to do a post to this URL, and this will give you, this will actually do a compaction. Along the way, it's going to check all of the database and it will give you errors. It will fix errors that it can and give errors if it cannot. Let's see. What is the best way to do automatic testing, automatic integration testing when querying of indexes is involved? Usually, if you have standard indexes, map indexes, just setting query your rights is the easiest thing. Something that I found very useful for testing is this one, NoStel. And this is basically a document query listener. You add it in here. This thing only happen in your tests. And that's it. That makes sure that all of your queries inside the test are never stale. That's the easiest thing to do about it. Is there a way to have to join two documents that generate a new document on the fly? Yes, that's called transform results, and that's absolutely supported. So Vlad is asking about replication testing with 2244. That's a bug. I'm pretty sure we fixed that. 2244 and 2245, if I remember correctly, we made some modification to avoid the race condition during replication. If you still can get that in 2246 or 7, whatever the latest, please post about that and we'll get it fixed. And yes, we put a lot, so the error that you get is cannot modify a snapshot. This is probably a bug. And we have a lot of those sort of things to just, we don't want to give you a null reference exception or slightly corrupt data. So we do a lot of early checking, and it really helps in the robustness, and when you actually have issues, it also helps solve them. We have a question from Ryan Karg. What is the best way to replicate index definition across replication nodes? And the way to do that is just to do so. Just create them across all the nodes. Let's see. I think there is something there. Index creation. I'm pretty sure we did something about that. No. Index creation. Let's see. Here we go. It looks like we are doing that. So, really? Okay. So, as you can see, so the best way to replicate indexes definition across nodes is to have the replication document set up and just create the indexes then, and then we will actually do that. And we have a question from Mehmet Kut. Sorry, again, I'm killing your name. So Mehmet Kut is asking, I'm a RavenDB newbie. After session, if you have time, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I will be happy to answer your question. Please send it to the main list, and this is the place to solve that. Let's see. No, Judah, it's not possible to write link queries in the studio. You can do that through a link pad, and also Link Insight recently added support for RavenDB. Andy, yes, this will be this should be available online on YouTube in a short while. Probably if you're listening to this, you're already seeing the recorded one. Guys, thank you very much for participating. I'm sorry for the bug that we had earlier with the SQL replication. We work to fix that as soon as possible. Goodbye. Oh, and thank you, Mehmet. Never mind. Thank you, guys. Goodbye.